A lot of us see other homeschool moms on social media, and we see them on YouTube, and we see how they do things, how they promote different curricula, and how they set up their homeschool spaces. And we think, wow, that looks really great, and we want to copy exactly what they're doing. We don't realize that we don't really need to do those things. So the first thing that I'd like to share that you don't actually need is an expensive all-in-one boxed curriculum. Especially in the early years, you do not need an expensive boxed set for every single subject. In the early elementary years, you can absolutely homeschool your kids with a simple math curriculum that teaches them the basics like counting and adding and subtracting, and some manipulatives. And you don't even have to purchase those math manipulatives. You can just use what you have around the house, like blocks or Legos or really anything. We used to use markers and pencils for my kids to count with and to teach them the concepts of addition and subtraction. It's also a good idea to have a good language arts curriculum. Again, simple, just something that teaches them the basics of reading and phonics and writing. And you want to make sure that you have something that teaches them very basic grammar rules also. Now you can teach science through things like videos, fun experiments, and also nature walks. And the same thing with history. You do not need a specific history curriculum, especially in those early years. You can absolutely just watch video series like Liberty's Kids, which my children really enjoyed. You can look through or have them read historical fiction. You can read those living books to them that teach them about historical time periods. And it's just kind of organic. It's not a formal history curriculum that you might use with your kids when they're in middle school or especially high school. Homeschooling can truly be done on any budget. You can spend hundreds of dollars on a boxed curriculum that has all the lesson plans laid out for you, and it's super convenient. But you also can absolutely use free resources in your homeschool, and you can give your kids an excellent education that way. Another thing that you do not need is a homeschool room. Now, we have a room for homeschooling right now, but in the beginning, we did not have a designated space for homeschooling. We used the kitchen table, and I had one of those plastic shelving units that I still had left over from college. I used that to store books in and workbooks and papers and art supplies, and I had that in the playroom area of our house. It just kind of felt natural because my kids were little then, and they spent a lot of time in the toy room. I had some maps up on the wall in that room also, and some just basic school posters that we got from the dollar store. And so that was our space, and it worked really well. My kids would do their work at the kitchen table, and it was already covered with paint and glue and glitter and all kinds of things from crafts. So you do not need a formal homeschool room that's all decorated with the different things you'd typically find in a classroom in a public or private school. We have homeschooled in all kinds of rooms in our home. My kids have done their work in the living room, laying on their stomachs. We have read books on the couch, all kind of, snuggled up together. and that has been great for making memories, for bonding. My kids have done their schoolwork in their rooms. One of my kids has a desk in their room, so she likes to do some of her schoolwork on her desk in her room, sometimes on her bed. And we have done school outside on the patio table. We have done lots of science experiments outside in the backyard, or sometimes we've done it in the driveway. One time we did a volcano experiment, and that was done in the driveway in the middle of a weekday. So you can absolutely utilize any room in your home to homeschool. Something else that you do not need to homeschool successfully is a ton of hours. Now, in the beginning, I will admit that I fell into this trap of thinking that I had to spend a lot of time homeschooling my kids. When my husband and I first discussed homeschooling my son, who was 6 at the time, I thought, my goodness, there's just no way that I can sit down at the table with him for 6 hours teaching him all these different subjects. I don't have the time. I have a 3-year-old to take care of at the same time, and I just didn't want to spend all that time homeschooling. But I realized quickly that I didn't need to spend a ton of time doing it. Homeschooling, especially early on, is something that doesn't take up a lot of time, because your kids are not going to be, they don't have to be learning, each of those subjects in a 6-hour span of time. Homeschooling is very versatile, and so like I said, you can homeschool pretty much anywhere in your house. You can homeschool within any time frame that you want to. So you can do like a half an hour of math and then come back and do half an hour of language arts. You can break up the lessons if you wanted to do 15 lessons of math and then another 15 minutes, which works really well for most kids who just need a break anyway. And so you don't need to sit down from 8 a.m., take a lunch break and then go to 3 o'clock or 2:30. And when your kids are older, they can do their work independently. So right now my kids are 14 and 17. And so I've been gradually helping them, guiding them to the point where they can do the majority of their work on their own. So when your kids get to that middle school stage, they can do a lot of the work on their own. So you will not be spending a lot of time teaching them those subjects. They are watching videos or, reading through the material themselves, keeping track of their own schedules and lesson plans digitally or on paper. So if you're teaching them to become more independent over the years as they get older, then they will naturally just do their schoolwork on their own. And something else that I found really helpful that cuts down on a lot of time homeschooling is to combine your kids. If they're about 3 years apart, you can combine them for subjects like science and history, and also have a strategy in place where you rotate through kids so you're not bouncing between them constantly, which takes up a lot of time, and it also stresses you out. I actually have a video on how to do that, and I'll link it in the description below. Now, something that may be a little controversial that you do not need is a co-op. So I have never enrolled my kids in a co-op, and my son is going to graduate next May. There are a lot of positives about joining a co-op. For instance, those friendships that you make being among other homeschoolers. You have other moms to teach certain subjects that you might be weaker in, or that you just really don't feel confident teaching. But I've also heard a lot of negatives about being in a co-op from friends, even from my sister. Just there can be a lot of pettiness among moms who are working together to teach kids. Unfortunately, you would think that it wouldn't happen or shouldn't happen among homeschoolers, but it often does. Because it's an organization, there are some politics, small level or on a small scale, but there are politics that come into play. There are with other people that you have to work with, make decisions with, and you have a whole variety of different ideas and opinions, and not everyone agrees on how best to organize something or how to approach something. And another thing is that you need to follow, the rules or the structure of that co-op. But you absolutely do not need to enroll your kids in a co-op in order to homeschool successfully. They will still get that interaction with other kids. If you are intentional to make that happen. We are a part of a church that with a lot of homeschooling families, and so my kids have just naturally become friends with those other children, and they play together after their schoolwork is done on weekends. And we've gotten together with other families just for game nights and a community group. And so they have made a lot of friends that way. And one of the stereotypes about homeschoolers is that they're not socialized. And I can tell you that this is completely untrue. My kids know so many people, not just other homeschooling kids, but they know, they know neighbors, they know people out in the community because we are going outside of our house. Another thing that you do not need is to finish the curriculum within 1 year. If you find that your child is struggling with the material, you can stretch the curriculum out over 2 years if you need to. If they just really enjoy what they're learning and you want to just take extra time to focus on certain topics that the curriculum presents, you can do that. You can even do like 1.5 years with a particular curriculum, if that's what works best for you and your child. There was 1 year that I saw my daughter was really taking a lot of time to finish her math worksheets, and it was just really stressing her out. It was taking over an hour for her to do those problems. So what I did was I had her only do one side of the worksheet to cut down on the amount of work that she had to do. And so we ended up stretching that math curriculum over about 1.5 years. And then I just filled in, some of the gaps, some of the remaining time with reviewing just basic concepts that I felt like she needed to be stronger in. So yeah, you are not locked into a 1 year time frame for any one curriculum. And something else that you do not need is to have your child take pre-algebra in 7th grade. Pre-algebra is just that beginning level of higher math that rests on a foundation of all the other basic concepts that your kids have learned in elementary school and early middle school. And if they cannot recall multiplication facts immediately, or if they're still struggling with fractions, percents, and decimals, then they are going to really struggle with pre-algebra. And some kids just aren't ready for it when they're 12. And plus puberty. I mean, they're going through a lot of changes. There's a lot of emotional turmoil in those years. So it might be best if they just wait a year and they take pre-algebra in 8th grade instead of a 7th grade, and then algebra 1 in 9th grade. I know that one of mine could definitely have benefited from waiting another year to take pre-algebra. So these are the things that after 10 plus years of homeschooling, I can confidently say you do not need to homeschool. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe so that you don't miss out on any other homeschooling videos that I put out. There's homeschooling tips and ideas. And I'll see you guys in the next one.